New CNN reporting this morning, a source telling CNN the Trump administration is confident they will prevail in the ongoing legal battles over his use of executive power, even though he has lost several cases in court. The ultimate goal is to get these cases to the highest court in the land, the U.S. Supreme Court. Joining us now is former Manhattan prosecutor Jeremy Saland. The question is, if this is the ultimate goal to get it to the Supreme Court, is this simply the Trump administration trying to make sure that Donald Trump gets more presidential power? The Supreme Court has already given him the immunity power last year. Is he simply looking for more from this court?
I think the evidence, if you look at it objectively, is an absolute yes. He is pushing and grabbing as much power, and I say pushing, he's trying to pull it in actually, as much power as he can. And we hear him, whether it's on Truth Social, talking about pardons, whether it's challenging birthright, whether there's this privilege doctrine, how far it's gone. Now we have using a wartime doctrine to deport people without rights, where otherwise there would be some form of due process. That does not exist under this act now with the Alien Enemies Act.
Let me ask you, the judge, James Boasberg, he hasn't even issued a ruling here yet on whether the Trump administration violated his order when they flew deportation flights out of the country, when the judge had ruled that they needed to turn the flights around, where those planes were. There's a lot of questions that the judge has asked for. So what happened and what are the concerns here?
Well, at least initially what happened is what the judge is trying to figure out is when did they leave American soil? When did they leave the American airspace? Right. When did they land? Those are the preliminary questions. That's not what tomorrow will be about the hearing. But the real concerns are if the president can enact this law that is not an incursion by a foreign government or a foreign nation at a time of war, but an alleged gang of people without any due process, who do we know who's being scooped up? And I would say to you also, we're talking about children potentially because the law allows for people 14 and older to be taken without that due process, without any rights, and then just being deported, not back to their home country, in this case Venezuela, to a third country. Someone has nothing to do with it. So there's a lot of concerns. Who's next? Where are those checks and balances? The executive authority and power is not completely infinite. It's defined by law.
Trump has spent a good deal of time attacking judges throughout his time in his presidency, in both iterations of his presidency. He goes especially hard against those who are appointed by the other party, but the ones he focuses on are the people who rule against him. And he said things like they should be impeached just recently. They were removed. I'm curious what this does to the judicial system as a whole. Is there intimidation and what it means for the safety of these judges?
There's absolutely intimidation, and I hate to sound so glib, but he is lifting his leg on the Constitution. He's desecrating all of our rules and all of our laws in that sense. You don't say, I want to impeach a judge because I don't agree with him. And we needed Judge Roberts from the Supreme Court, the chief judge, to come out and say, no, it's not an impeachment. That's not how we do things. We do things by an appeal. There's a process. It's frightening because the next question is, what happens if Donald Trump and the administration says, I don't want to follow the judge's order. I'm the law of the land. What's the practical reality? It would be different for you or me, but is that going to happen here? So yes, if I'm a judge and I believe in the rule of law, I am concerned.
You talked about the fact that Justice Roberts, not just Judge, Justice Roberts, who is the Chief Justice, said, hey, doesn't name Donald Trump, but he was very pointed in his response. Clearly, it was a message to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump did say in his interview that he would not defy the courts. So the big question is how rare this moment was for a Supreme Court justice. The case is not before the Supreme Court justice yet. So speaking on something that was said by a president. I mean, has this ever happened before?
You know, this is certainly unique and very rare that a Supreme Court justice, and in this case, again, the Chief Justice has to step up and stand up and say, hey, that's not how we do things. And there's a lot of weight on those justices' shoulders. Yeah. And I even look at, Amy Coney Barrett and say, she stood up. And when I say against, she didn't stand up against Donald Trump. She stood up for the rule of law. And she may not ultimately agree with a particular decision, but she's saying there's a process that you have to follow. And I'm referencing the sentencing back in state court for Donald Trump. So it's incredibly difficult for these judges, whether you're a district court judge or an appellate judge or a Supreme Court judge, to make sure that you give a fair and honest ruling when you're getting all this noise and all this frightening rhetoric from politicians, and the president as well. It's a frightening thing for this nation.
Amy Coney Barrett has faced a huge backlash by conservatives calling her a DEI hire and all manner of other things. So
terrific.
The president says something and then everyone globs on, and that's why I asked you about whether or not these judges feel safe doing what they are supposed to be doing. Jeremy Saland, thank you so much. I really appreciate
My pleasure.
Analysis. John?